Bang! Oh, I hit the mark and then I screwed it up because I said hit the mark. In any case, welcome to Gamers Health. I am your bartender, Eric Tenkar, and with me, as every Saturday night, is my lovely wife, Rach. But today,
Hello.
we have a special guest. We have John Healy II, and John Healy runs games for the visually impaired and the blind. When I say games, RPGs, possibly otherwise, but it's something that's uh, very important to Rach and I.
Mm-hmm.
As most of my viewers know, Rach is legally blind, and it was part of the reason why I designed initially Swords and Wizardry Light. Although my niece, who was 5 at the time, held it up and said, "Uncle, it's only 4 pages. You can teach me to read, and I can play D&D." But the other reason was I wanted something that was light enough that non-gamers didn't have to read just enough rules to play with, but not so much that you had to refer to them, because even the dice, the D20 and the D6. So I saw with Rach, you often have difficulty initially knowing a D20 from a D12,
Right.
because similar shapes.
Yeah, I'll be counting size or
So simplifying it to a D20 and a D6, something that you can spot the differences quickly and easily, was the idea. And by the way, Tom, I saw your comment. The Mets won. I was walking back to the car. We walked 20 minutes. We parked 20 minutes away from the effing stadium. I got my exercise in today. I didn't think I was going to get my cardio, but I did. So, John, thank you for joining us. By the way, thank you for, I'm going to fall on the sword. Thank you for accepting my fuck up for last week. As Rach could tell you, last week was a very, I don't want to say stressful, but a lot of balls became into the juggling field, and a lot of distractions landed in my lap, and I was distracted. And she was the one who kept on telling me, "When's our guest coming on?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, it's not till next week." And then she's like, "Did you confirm it?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, oh. So,
it's all good.
I appreciate it.
You explained it. I understood. Lord knows I have been there on more than a few occasions in my life. So I got you. It's good.
I didn't have all this gray hair before I retired. I had some of it, but I've gotten it in my retirement. So John, actually introduce yourself. Tell us about how you got involved in this, because I think that's going to be very interesting, and it's going to be enlightening to me. And then I want to learn and find out about how you achieve what you do as I go through the comments.
All right. So my name is John, and I actually was born, as Rachel can probably already tell, I have albinism.
Okay.
So I was born with legally blind, and just like another member of my family also has the same situation. And so I grew up in the legally blind and blind or visually impaired community. And I had a family member. My mother worked very, very hard to make sure that I could do a lot of the things that kids who were quote unquote normal could do. And that's where a lot of my inspiration to do a lot of stuff came from. I started figuring out how to put puzzle pieces together in order to make what I wanted to do work for me, because what I wanted to do wasn't always accessible to someone with a visual impairment. So how this came about, or my involvement with this, I've been playing RPGs for the better part of 30 years.
Okay.
Running games, playing in games, a lot of running games. Most of what I was doing was text-based. I play games on computer forums, and I had a lot of fun with that, because when you're doing that, well, what you can see doesn't matter. It's what you can write, and the reading on the computer screen, and no one's sitting there looking over your shoulder saying, "Have you read that rule yet?"
Mm-hmm.
Did you check that yet? You know, so I was able to take my time. But then I started playing in person more and more, and I caught the bug, as it were, the kind of the acting, just feeling of the inspiration and the passion, and that made me realize that's my preferred way of playing.
Mm.
But what it also made me realize is complicated rule sets were hard for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because there's so many rules that interact, and you have to remember them.
Yeah.
And my memory is not good on a good day. And a lot of character sheets, because I started in the end of second edition, or 2.5 as it's referred to. And then I really got my gaming chops during the beginning of third edition of D&D. And I just dove into every book, and I dove into every supplement, and I was all about the builds and the tree of feats and all that stuff. But when it came time to actually play, I realized this character sheet is so busy. There's so many things on it that it took me time to get down there, get out my magnifier, read the character sheet, double check my notes, and read the sheet again, make sure I had the right line because I'm tracking back and forth. And that was time that slowed the game down for everyone else. Now, the people I was playing with at the time were very understanding, and it wasn't really an issue for them, but it was an issue for me because I could notice. So, and that continued through when I played Pathfinder, and even when I started playing 5th edition, although 5th edition was better than the others. At first, at the low levels, 5th edition plays very much similar to an OSR. But even before 5th Ed came out, that's when I kind of first dove into the OSR, and I found Swords and Wizardry. And the moment I read Swords and Wizardry, I should say I found Swords and Wizardry through the Rule Cyclopedia. So I went to Rule Cyclopedia first, then Swords and Wizardry.
Okay.
And I found Swords and Wizardry, and I just said, this is it. This is what I love. Because the character sheet can fit on a note card, or I can fit the note card's worth of stuff on a regular sized piece of paper.
Right.
And I can have it at large print, whatever I want. And it was perfect. And so I started just diving into those games and doing that. Well, during that time, I was also working at a school for children with special needs that focuses on blind and visually impaired.
Awesome.
And about it would be about 4 years ago at this point, I found out that one of the other teachers' aides at the school was starting up a D&D club. And I kind of just basically volunteered myself and said, nope, we're doing this. And that summer, they gave me the opportunity, and the other teachers' assistants as well, a gentleman by the name of Michael, they gave us the opportunity to run a summer, a week, like 3-week-long courses of teaching introduction to role-playing games, because the administrators of the school were seeing the educational value of it in taking a lot of different skills, such as economics and mathematics and reading, storytelling, all these different skills.
Problem solving.
Exactly. Teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so they were very supportive of it, and they invited us to put it together. So we started putting it together. And I turned to Michael at that point, and I said, okay, Michael, I'm going to tell you this right now. We have 1 week with these kids for this course. It takes us multiple days to create 5 5th edition characters with the way that you do it with the students during the club.
Mm.
And he's like, yeah, I know. You do. Okay, we're not arguing this. I know a system that will allow us to do it in minutes. And I ran a demo game for him. Not the same day, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But, we set up demo, and I ran Swords of Wizardry Continual Light for him.
Wow.
Nice.
Because at that point, I I had that book. I actually had this copy specifically
Uh-oh.
that I've now been beaten with. And so he played it, and he had never played anything except 5th edition. That was his introduction to the game. And he just said, "Oh my gosh, yes, we will use this. This is so much better for what we're trying to do." And to put credit where credit is due, once I talked to you, because I talked to you about that was like 3 years ago now.
Oh wow!
And I asked you, Eric, if it was okay for us to translate it into a format that was more appropriate for our students to read on their screen readers. And you gave me permission to do that. This discussion started with Swords and Wizardry Light, and then it went on to Continual Light from there. And you agreed to that, and I was very appreciative of that. So, Michael,
Where's?
Just to interject real quickly, a couple of years ago, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking with Frog God Games on how to get Swords and Wizardry Light into that, but nobody at Frog God had a connection that could do so, because it actually came up because of Rachel's visual impairment, and it's important to us. So to have an opportunity to have it put into a format that the visually impaired can get better use out of it, to me it's not just a no-brainer. It's a yes, please do so.
Yeah. So to put credit where credit is due, Michael is the one who did the reformatting of the text document, because he knows how to set it up in Microsoft Word.
Okay.
In such a way that Microsoft Word will, when you use all the text, the speech to text prompts, it cycles through things and uses a lot of the labels properly. And I can barely articulate it, much less perform the action myself. Because when I learned my technology, I was kind of in a bare bones technology level for a lot of things. I had some options for things, but I never learned how to use Zoom text or JAWS.
Yeah, I never had to do that either. So you don't always know how to adapt things to people's needs because you don't have the experience with that.
Yeah. And so for me, I'm very much a hands-on kind of person, which is reflective as to what I came up with. So the first 2 years of this program that we had, and we used Swords and Wizardry Continual Light, we were running it virtually online using Zoom. So we would talk with the kids, and we'd play Theater of the Mind, and that worked great. But this year, Michael couldn't do it this year. He was doing a different program, and the administrators approached me and said, "Okay, well, can you do this on your own?" And I asked them, "Well, is it going to be in person? Can I have it in person, or is it going to be over Zoom?" And they said, "Well, what do you feel like?" And I said, "Well, if it's in person, I can run a large group.
Right.
If it's over Zoom, 4 students maximum."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's harder to run a group virtually than it is in person. Like Rach knows me at conventions, I can run 8 to 10 easily. I'll give up my seat because I stand. I can stand, I can walk around, and I can talk to people directly. Whereas and virtual is good, but you can't handle that size of a group. And by the way, Tabletop Taproom Tom has a question, which I'm sure we'll get to later, but I want to mention now. He's a Star Frontiers guy, classic Star Frontiers from TSR, and he'd like to know, because he does a lot of, he actually, I believe, publishes one of their zines. He'd like to know what would it take to take this existing system like Star Frontiers and make a character sheet for the visually impaired. And that's
nice.
Something nice. And
that's great. We'll be able to send people away with
yes, and
stuff that they can bring.
And since Tom's bringing it up, I'm going to throw this in here at this point. We are doing a new printing of Continual Light, new art, new layout, but I would love to be able to include, at the very least, a downloadable visually impaired version with that. And if we could make that happen, I would love it, because you don't see that out there too often. And I would just you know, it's something that can be done that helps people. Why not? It's a no-brainer. So sorry to interrupt and derail, but since
No, it's all good.
Tom's question brought that up, it made me think a little bit further along. So,
No, that's great.
but yes, back to you, John.
Thank you. I'll try to wrap this up. I know I'm talking a lot.
No, dude, this is awesome. I'm loving this.
Awesome. Good. Thank you. So in the lead up to the course for this year, I was doing a lot of brainstorming. I was, outside of the let's find a module that will work for the kids. Because the first year I created the module that I used with my group out of whole cloth. I just invented the whole thing, and it worked really well. The kids seemed to really like it. The second year I ran Tegel Manor.
Okay.
Oh.
Because Tegel Manor is the first module that I ever played when I was a little seedling. And therefore, it has a very special place in my heart. And so I was like, I'm going to introduce these kids to it. And it worked really well. I ran that with Continual Light, and the kids were just, they loved it. And they got further into the manor than I ever did when I was playing.
Well, it's a fun house dungeon type of deal. So
Yeah.
if you're willing to throw your disbelief to the winds, it is the most amazing experience because then anything can happen. So all right, I'll talk to a few ghosts. I'll do this. I'll do that.
Yep.
And it's great for that.
So the third year, I settled on the Willow Valley mini adventure path. That's from James Spawn's Omnibus.
Yep.
Excuse me. But then I said, okay, well, I've got that sorted. I've got the rules sorted because we're not changing what works.
Right.
So I needed something to do with the dice. Now, the first couple of times we ran it, because I was able to get my hands on Braille 6-sided dice.
Nice.
I've seen them. Somebody brought them to North Texas a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting to see.
Wow.
But I've never seen anything but D6s.
So I'm trying to get it. Okay. So
Yep.
I 3D printed these at home. For the first year, I made like 75 of them.
Wow.
And we sent out 3 to each player. And so what we did is we played the Continual Light, but instead of a D20, we used 3D6.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't change anything else.
Okay.
And it worked really well. The kids, they enjoyed it. They had a good time. They didn't notice the difference. I explained the difference to them because we're going for honesty here.
Changes, but yeah.
Yeah. But I also explained why, because I didn't have a Braille D20. Well, this year, the DOTS program, DOTS, they have released STL files for 3D printers for a full set of polyhedral dice.
Oh my God.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so they've actually been out for a couple of years, I think. Don't quote me on that, but they've been out for at least a full year. I was reluctant to print them on my 3D printer because I don't know why. I think I was just being stubborn. But I finally went ahead and printed off a group of 6 D20s. I don't know if you can see that.
Oh my God, yes.
So,
wow.
So this thing you can get the STL from the DOTS program website for $1. But if you go to their shop on the website Thingiverse, you can download the file for free.
Okay.
Because they want to get these dice in the hands of players.
Yeah.
And they're not perfect because obviously you're printing them yourself if you have a printer. And, there's going to be some variances based upon how you decide to print your dice. So it's not a perfect experience. What DOTS is working on right now is trying to get a way to have them professionally manufactured so that they can start, turning it into a product to sell. But right now they just said, let's get the concept out there. So I got that. So I already had the D6s. I got the D20. So that's dice sorted. So I thought to myself, what else can I do? What else is missing? And I thought about the battle map. And my students had a bunch of suggestions over the course of the year, because I also was running White Star for the D&D club, half the D&D club members over the course of this past year. And they were recommending ideas to me about how we could do terrain, and I tried a couple of them. Some of them worked better than others. At one point, I tried getting a Scrabble board that had the raised ridges to kind of draw a map with the tiles on the Scrabble board.
Oh, well, the old deluxe Scrabble board, the one that I think I finally threw out.
Yeah, didn't really work. Don't recommend it.
Oh, the one with the lines.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
It is very tactile, but it doesn't, like, when you put your hands on it to touch it, they just the tiles get moved all over.
Yeah.
Oh,
They don't
not
fit
secure.
they don't fit very deep
It should be magnetized maybe on the bottom.
or something.
Yep.
Or
That would work better. So, but then I remembered that years ago, I backed a Kickstarter for a thing called Gridscape. And what Gridscape made is these. The guy in charge of Gridscape was looking to make these dungeon tiles that would slot into a pegboard.
Interesting.
Oh, wow.
So that you could build up from there. And the way he designed them, because he's actually an engineer by trade, not a game designer or anything. He designed them so they would stack one upon the other.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow.
Precisely engineered. And allow you to create a fully three-dimensional dungeon. And one of his demonstrations is recreating, I think it was Caves 1 and 2 from The Keep on the Borderlands. It was one of his pictures. I was sold. Like, yes. Well, they've been sitting in a box for a long time, and I hadn't used them. Because I also had Dwarven Forge, and the few times I did have a home game, I always felt obligated to bring out the Dwarven Forge.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the fancy stuff. You might as well use it, right? So, but I busted out these tiles and I started building with them. And I started using my hands to try to move the tiles around. And I realized that while it's not perfect, they were locking in place in the pegboard. And so I started using them to just do some basic maps during the school year. But for this summer course, I wanted something more robust. So I said, okay, well, we're gonna pull out all the stops. I revved up the 3D printer. I placed more orders with Gridscape, or battleboardgames.com, I believe is their website. And I was able to create a setup like this.
Oh, my.
Holy shit, that's so beautiful.
That is awesome.
Wow.
Wow. And it's interactive. You know, they can.
And it pulls you
tactile.
in. It's like, like if you were walking by it in a room, you'd be like, what's going on over there?
So,
it looks really cool.
It's visual and it's tactile at the same time.
It draws people from everything, from many senses. Yeah.
So how this all comes together is the Gridscape will create the walls, and I'm going to attempt to move these with my fingers. See how much pressure it takes.
It's like a Lego is almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to really push on them to get something to happen. So, and then I've got these big ogres here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got this water here in the middle, so you can touch the water, just like, hey, that's the pool of water, or that's the giant slime, depending on what you want to use it for. There's a cage here in front. You can't quite see it, but there's a big old cage. Barrels, more monsters, doors. Open and close the doors. This bit here, picked that up from a Michaels, and just slapped my the converter pegs on it, which is the next thing that I did, because I went on to Tinkercad and I designed these pegs, because I spent 2 days well, not 2 days, but I spent several hours over the course of 2 days trying to find something that would work with a pegboard that I could glue to the bottom of these miniatures that was manufactured, engineered, something that would allow me to just glue it and go.
Mm.
It did not exist.
Really?
I went because I thought, they have some blanks that you can use to plug up holes in pegboards, but
Right.
a lot of those lock into place really snugly.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And besides that, they have rounded tops. So that you can't really glue those onto miniatures without causing more problems. And so I said, okay, well, so I went onto Tinkercad and I designed this peg, flat topped, a little bit long, because it's the length that makes it work. And then you glue it onto the bottom of the miniature. And then that allows you
to know where everybody is in the
right. They can tactilely feel without the fear of moving
knocking
it
down. Because I would never touch I don't ever touch my token or whatever signifies me on the board. I never touch it. I'll usually ask the game master to do it because I'm not going to be the one
that knocks everything over.
That knocked everything over.
And that's not uncommon, and not just amongst people of the visually impaired community either. I also know some game masters that are like that, but that's because they finally painted everything and they're like, no. But so I started putting this together, and I felt like such a fool when I came up with the idea, because I'd spent weeks trying different methods.
Right.
And then even after I came across the idea of the pegs, because I got the idea from watching our students play chess, because we have chess boards that, they're set up like a pegboard is, with the holes in the center of each square, and then each of the chess pieces has a peg at the bottom. And I have been playing chess with our students for years, and I never thought, when I was looking for a solution, it never occurred to me to use the same thing. So I felt like such a fool. And by the time the idea actually occurred to me, I had the peg, I had prototyped it and started to mass produce within an hour on my 3D printer.
Wow.
And I'm just like, I could have done this years and years ago, and the kids would have had so much fun. But oh well. Anyway, it's done now. So we started using it, and it really made a huge difference. I had students that had been playing with me for years, because some of our students are return students for this program, that had never, one of our students, they had never had a battle board at all before, much less a tactile one.
Okay. Yeah.
And the whole concept kind of excited them. It made them really excited for the game and for, exploring what more stuff they can do with it. They really dived into it. And now one of the, I had an intern who was with me during that time as well. And that intern gave me an idea. This is something that I will share. If you are someone who is visually impaired, or you have a visually impaired or blind person in your game, one of the things you can do is have them attach a little bead or some physical object to their miniature. On top of just their miniature being theirs, and you kind of feel
right.
But use a bead, and that will tell them when the battle board gets busy. That's my character. But if you have every member of the party also put a bead, and it could be the same bead or it could be a unique bead to their character on their miniature somewhere, then that also gives the student who is blind or visually impaired another means to feel.
Yeah.
These are where my party members are. So I'm not going to throw the fireball over
Right.
there.
There you go.
Because I actually had that happen during one of the games that we played.
Oh no.
Now, in this case, the beads had already been put in place, and the player just made a mistake.
Yeah.
He made it knowingly, in a sense, because I did warn him, like, hey, this might happen, and he's like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. Like, okay.
Oh,
right.
bugger.
Get out 5d6. What? So it made such a huge difference to these kids, and I'm never going back. In fact, there's part of me, because this became so useful for them,
right?
And I spent so much time converting some stuff to work with this. There's a part of me that says, why won't I just use this for my regular games too? Because it's cat resistant.
That's important.
How many?
Hey.
Yeah. You got those cats that
We've got a lot of cats.
They knock that stuff over
Oh, yeah.
all the time.
They just live to do that.
Go back to some of my old videos when I was still pulling out the Dragon Feltothraxis. My prior kitty, our deceased daughter Ashley, would go along and take my dungeon morph dice and go bink, bink, right off the desk. I'm like, I'm filming right now. What are you pinking each one off? So yeah, she would have had a thrill doing that with terrain. Jeez.
So that's the long of how I got into this.
Really cool.
That is really awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing how your passion for the games got to be the kids' passion too, and that you were able to make this accessible, even down to the minute detail of the board.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I am a sighted individual. I wear glasses. My vision is correctable, but it's kind of crappy. But I'm not an individual who personally experiences the kind of vision that can't be corrected.
Yeah,
I can understand much of that experience because I've been married to Rach for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And she's still putting up with me, amazingly enough. But we joke about it at conventions. If we separate all the time, but or we go shopping, we separate. And how do we find each other? I do echolocation. I whistle, and Rach can figure out, because she knows her husband's whistle. Except somebody whistled like me once, and she thought she found her husband, and she didn't.
I looked like, you're not my husband. Get out of here.
But these are and that's just something that evolved in the relationship, because you find ways to compensate and to fix or do what you can with it. So again, when I was doing Swords and Wizardry Light, I wanted a game initially. I was thinking one sheet, two sides, that you could leave at a library or leave at a game store and just bring people back to old school gaming. It wanted to be accessible and simple, and the two dice, because I would experience with Rach.
Yeah.
The need to separate, it's too granular.
With all the many, the dice with all the many sides.
All the polyhedrons was too granular.
A lot of them were too similar.
Yeah. Whether you're teaching a young gamer for the first time, or whether you're teaching somebody who's never gamed,
mm-hmm.
or you're working with somebody, in the case with somebody like Rach, yourself, somebody who's visually impaired, simplifying what your dice, so you got a D20 and a D6, is great. Once you start throwing in the D8s, D10s, D12s, is it necessary?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah,
it isn't. So that was my initial thought with Swords and Wizardry Light. It was my great retirement project, which I give a lot of credit to Matt Finch for giving me the go-ahead, and Frog Eye Games for investing in me and doing the layout, and Zach Laser and Mr. Spawn himself.
Yeah.
Because James did some last-minute rule tweaks, because I am not a game designer. James is a game designer. So James is the one that said, dude, you're making things too complicated. I go, I thought I did a pretty good job simplifying. He's like, why do you have two spells for Wizard Lock and Knock? Just make it one spell and it's reversible. I'm like, you son of a...
Right?
And then Continual Light, which in the case of Continual Light, with the new printing, we're dropping Swords and Wizardry because Matt Finch has formed his own company. And I don't want to... Matt's a good person, and I don't think he'd have a huge issue if I was still Swords and Wizardry Continual Light. But he needs to... That's...
You wanted him to have
Swords
his
and
own
Wizardry
distinct-
is his distinct.
Yeah.
And Continual Light has its own... It's simplified, but it has all the options, and it's something easily to build off of. So, I mean, when we're doing the new printing, we're not changing the rules, but just somebody who has a better layout skill than me is going to be behind that, because I don't. It's not my... Everybody has to know where their strengths lie, and layout is not mine. But, again, my niece was like, it's simple. You can teach me 4 pages and I can play D&D. This is awesome, Uncle. And then when she saw Continual Light, she's like, it's more D&D that I can play. And it's designed to, like you said, get somebody at that table and have a character in 10 minutes. When I'm running a convention, Swords and Wizardry Light, I literally don't bring pre-gens. I'm like, hey, you're rolling out your own characters. If you survive, bring the character back to another con. If you survive 2 cons, you're level 2. I mean, it's easy, it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
It gets you invested. But again, my whole idea was accessibility with it. So that's the reason why when it comes to things like it's been translated into Portuguese, it's been translated into German. My only request when I did so was like, if you're going to translate it and you're going to offer it, in this case, it should be free. All right, if it's a translation, I'm not going to make money off it. You want to? They did it for Free RPG Day in Germany a number of years ago, and I was like,
that's awesome.
That's fine. I mean, and technically, it's all open game content anyway. So I mean,
yeah, the whole fact that this is happening is just amazing to us because
yes. We talked about it.
Like, something about like this was part of the initial, vision of it.
Yeah, and just that,
and then to have it.
Yeah,
we didn't know how to finagle and be able to use certain systems to translate it for folks, and like it's just such a thrill to have it, come to fruition. So that other people, people with a
I think it's amazing. So, and I'm going to assume that when it comes to organizations that deal with the visually impaired, that there's connections between such organizations. You have my express permission to share those files, share the work, get it out there. If your organization needs it in writing, I'm happy to give it in writing, but they can hear it in the speech right now if they want to go back and listen to the video. I am thrilled. Getting it out there, role playing is it teaches so many skills. It helps. Me as a kid, I was a shy one. Would you believe that shit? But role playing brought me out of it. Role playing is my mother knew where I was and all my friends were. We were in the backyard or at the dining room table. She didn't have to worry about where her children were, where her friends' children were, because we were gaming. We were accounted for. It was good. And we learned big words with Gary Gygax and his Gygaxian in English. Oh my God. But it's before the internet, so you had to look up words in the library or infer their meaning by the context and everything else. Yeah. But it was something that has done so much, and it builds a community too. I mean, I think for those that don't know, last night on the Goodman Games Twitch channel, there was apparently a 4.5 hour long auction. I didn't think they were going to go that long, but there was a 4.5 hour long auction. Jim Kitchen ran the auction. It was for an individual named Aaron who has terminal cancer, stage 4, and it's for not for their cancer treatment, not for medical bills. It was for a college fund.
For
I'm
the
getting choked
child.
up.
For the
For the
a 6-year-old?
six-year-old
Yeah.
son. I think they raised over $31,000.
That's amazing. That's community.
That is community. That is something that I am very proud to be a part of. And it just, I get it irks me every once in a while when you hear the curmudgeons that go, the gaming's not a community, the avatar is not a community, it's just a way of playing. No, people are a community. Look, what you're doing is community. You're bringing this experience, this tool set and skill set that no matter what these children, teens, youths do later in their life, they will take that with them. And it will, that problem solving, like Rach mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll be the first one to say, as a rookie cop, when I couldn't figure out what to do at a location or a job I had to answer, I go,
yeah, I love this.
I would go, all right, if I was role playing a cop, what would I do? And I'd step back and I would, all right, if I was role playing a police officer, I would sound confident and do X, Y, Z. And you know what? 9 times out of 10, it was the right decision. And when it was wrong, it was still not horribly wrong.
All right.
The intent was right. Maybe by the book it was wrong. But it's just,
I believe that.
It's just amazing how useful the concepts of role-playing, tabletop gaming, community gaming, sitting at a table with other players, virtual or otherwise, how much it builds in us and how much it makes us what we are. I don't think I would necessarily be as confident and outgoing if it wasn't for role-playing games in my youth, honestly. And I was thrown into the GM spot, so you had to be outgoing and couldn't be shy because you were one running the games. You had to be ready to be judged because you might be the judge, but your players are going to judge you and how you run it. So all these things was a great learning experience. I'm so happy to see that it's getting out there to a community that, honestly, we don't, as people that are not vision impaired, we literally don't see the issues. Rob Conley, who is in my Monday night group, Bat in the Attic blog, great game designer, great, amazing maps. He joins us every other Friday, usually on the Random Generated Party live stream. Rob is deaf. He's got hearing aids, and even with the hearing aids, he only got about 50% hearing. So that's another thing that we, as I don't have a hearing issue, but now I'm more conscious of it. And if I've played in games with Rob as a fellow player or games that Rob has run,
right?
And you have to adjust yourself. Maybe Rob won't hear you when you speak up. He's not
right, and he's not ignoring you.
No, he's not ignoring you. He just
it's not because he's aloof.
No,
he didn't hear you.
So just being a little bit more cognizant of your fellow gamers.
Yeah.
And these are only the we're talking about vision. We're talking about hearing. I'm sure there are other issues that again we don't always.
Yeah, know it's any type of difference that comes to the table.
And that's where, that's the kind of thing that a session zero, I know with some people, the term session zero is kind of like a 4-letter word, but that's where a session zero can become important, is to identify, hey, this person's going to need a little help with vision, with, or a little more patience. This person has a hearing deficit, and so they're going to need a little more patience in this area. These are the tools we're going to use to compensate for that. Everyone needs to be aware of that. And if you're not cool with that, this is your moment to bow out politely.
Right. Yeah. No harm, no foul.
Exactly. We're going to take care of our players.
Zero.
Oh my God, we've woken up the beard, Rach.
Hey.
Ty, welcome.
Stuff.
Ty, you missed the meat and potatoes of this. We've been talking about RPGs for the gaming impaired, which, by the way,
gaming impaired.
Oh, sorry, the gaming impaired, the vision impaired. I might be gaming impaired. God damn it! I'm so but Ty, not this past North Texas, but the prior North Texas, we play tested a game he has kind of like in progress about was it a college football?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was a lot of fun, but it would be a game that visually impaired, if you had larger cards, could play. But I don't know how it would work for those that had no vision. You know, totally
Right, I
blind.
didn't play. You played, and I just ate my lunch before I had to go back to class.
But it was Ty is a good game designer. Might be a lawyer. We forgive him for that, but he actually is a pretty good game designer. Tom, yeah, session zero is a 4-letter word. Depends on what you consider session zero. I mean, I usually, if I'm playing anything but Swords and Wizardry Light,
Why is that a 4-letter word though?
well, because
they're like, oh, we just want a game and like that, or
well, in a way, because I've
never heard of it before. I think it's awesome idea.
Well, here's the thing. If you have an established group, we have an established group of players. Like every couple of months, we'll trade off on who's going to run, but it's the same. It's the same group of people. It's the same annoying bunch of bastages.
You guys have known each other for years, and whatever.
So there's no session zero.
So that might not be for you.
But if I was starting up a new group, like say I announced, hey, I'm doing a 6-session play test of James Bond's new setting. Not really secret, but in any case, say I was announcing that, and I'm getting 6 random people off the internet that I don't know, then session zero is that session where you get to know each other. All right. And I think the problem with a lot of grognards when we say session zero is, oh, well, I need a checklist. No, you don't need a checklist. Session zero is, hey, what are you expecting out of the game? Do you like combat? Do you like role playing? Do you like city encounters? Do you like wilderness encounters? Do you like to have things that are episodic where things wrap up, or do you want things where you're adventuring and we'll wrap you up in this hex, and then next week you start out and explore the following hex? It's to get a feel for what the group expects. Personally, for me, if I had a new group of players, I'd like that because I might say, hey, I want to do a sandbox and like a hex crawl, and maybe they want to do episodic. We're not going to mix. You got to know what your players want, and I don't think it's there is a fear again amongst a lot of the older timers, like they're going to tell me how to play, they're going to tell me what's right and wrong. No, it's everybody getting an idea of what everybody wants to get out of it.
Yep.
And
to ensure that you feel like
that you were compatible,
can be compatible,
right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because forming a random gaming group, and I'm not going to talk about conventions. Conventions are their own beast.
Yes.
But when you go and you form a random group at a game store, or you form a random group at wherever, it can be very rough because you don't know what you're going to get. When we first got married, Rach was very understanding that every Saturday night was me playing online with my online gaming group. But I had, we were a tight group, and nobody wanted to add people. But I get to know people on the internet, and I'd be like, all right, well, I have somebody I want to add to the group. We're going to do a 2-session tryout, and if at the end of those 2 sessions, I go, anybody has any concerns, you let me know. And I told the player coming in, I go, listen, it's a 2-session tryout, just be yourself. And everybody that we did that with fit, but that's probably because I also had an idea of what we were bringing. If it was somebody I'd never conversed with or dealt with, it's a little rougher. It's like a convention game. People go into it with the expectation of this is what we're playing. I'm going into this already knowing that I'm playing this, so it might not be a hex crawl, but all right, the dungeon. I read the description. I'm playing a dungeon. I know. But when it comes to a campaign, you have that session zero. It's important. It's also important to know, in my opinion, as a DM, well, what classes your players want to play, which classes not going to want to be played. The reason why I used to always play a cleric is because nobody wanted to play the heal bot.
Yeah, because then it's like you might know where you need to recruit further players
You
that
might.
are interested in doing
Yeah.
to fill in the gaps of like the classes or whatever
Or whatever's needed.
that
Yeah.
Mhm.
other people don't want to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I always think that session 0 gets a bad rap,
I
but
agree.
but at the same time, again,
It has its uses.
It has its uses, but it might not apply to your group. Like I said, like I don't think we've had a session 0, but you could call what we used to, session 0.5 for the incoming player because they had to prove themselves that they weren't going to go. It's like, you know what, the game session ended, everybody goes, "Oh man, that was horrible. I can't believe you played with so and so." You don't want that. Somebody like, "Oh yeah, you're in the group." You want to make sure everybody fits, and every group has a different feel.
Yes.
It really, really does.
Right, a different energy from the different people
Oh,
that
yeah.
are together.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and it's just like every GM has a different way of running,
Mhm.
and which is why I am blessed. I play in a group where everybody is a GM at some point. Everybody's a creator, so we're all a bunch of loudmouth assholes who have learned to take a step back and let the others step forward. It's kind of cool. It's like we're all giving other people a chance to role play because we're all GMs at heart who love to role play, but we know everybody else does. So you kind of it's interesting to watch that.
Yeah.
So, oh, let's see, Tammy, John, what can groups do now to help, given that they might not have any special dice or game tops?
So there's a few things you can do without the special equipment.
Mhm.
A lot of phones, actually, like your smartphone, will have the ability to use a voiceover, especially if it's an Apple smartphone, an iPhone.
Sure.
They actually have voiceover technology built into them. Most of the people who are visually impaired or blind already know this, and they just need to know how to, or that there are dice rolling apps that will work with the kind of text to speech program on the iPhone, or you can actually ask Google, say something like, okay, roll a d20. I'm not saying the whole thing because I don't want to trigger everyone's phones. And the phone will actually roll a die for you, and then it will tell you what number you got. And we've used that at our tables. So the best thing you can do is be okay with that.
Right.
Be okay with someone saying, I'm going to use this dice rolling app on my phone that I'm going to use voiceover, and everyone's going to hear what that person rolls. Let's see. As far as character sheet tracking, there's a couple different ways you can do that. If you are the person who is blind or visually impaired, you can track your character sheet using a Braille slate and stylus if you want to go really old school. There are you can use a kind of a text-to-speech or a Zoom text program on a laptop and access your character sheet that way, keeping an earbud in your ear so that you're be able to scroll down through your character sheet without not hearing what the DM is saying, that kind of thing. That's the system that's been used at by students that I've gamed with. Same thing goes when using a Braille note, which is a computer that works entirely on Braille. It has no monitor.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's a full-on laptop computer in the sense of power and function, but it just works in Braille. And they can open up Word documents just like anyone else does with their laptops and manage stuff that way. So the main thing to know is you don't necessarily have to do anything for the person who's visually impaired if they already, because they probably already know the tools that they need for some basic stuff. As long as you can make sure that they can figure out how to do the dice, the notes, they can handle just let them know that it's okay for them to
Right.
bring that out.
Right.
That you're not going to give them a hard time because they brought a cell phone to the table, or they brought a laptop to the game table. Because I've been in a lot of groups that had a very strong issue with that because of player distraction. And so some people that might have actually needed it didn't feel welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be my biggest recommendations that you can do at the drop of a hat, is just be aware of these things and be welcoming to them. Other things that can be done, if you don't need Braille dice, but you just need larger dice,
That was you, Rach.
Yeah.
you can get the larger dice. I think Chessex,
Got
I
them
think
in
it is.
purple.
So, yeah, so I got like I bought these jumbo dice years and years ago, and I use them with my students even now, those students that don't require the Braille dice.
Right.
And they love them. They think they're great. They love rolling them. It's a much better thing than using the the app on the phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Much prefer rolling physical dice.
Yeah.
It's more satisfying.
Yeah,
There's something
Yeah, I
about
think my
that.
biggest one is like that.
Yeah, it's pretty. Bill Webb had a foam D20 that was literally the size of a small child's head.
Yeah, I don't think
that's awesome.
No, I couldn't find that anywhere.
Yeah, no, he used to, because and actually he would just.
This one was like a heavy plastic.
Yeah, even before Swords and Wizardry Light, Bill Webb would often run games at cons, just rolling a D20 and a D6, and then he would never sit it. He would literally roll it on the floor so people could see it.
Yeah.
Sitting around, it's like, yep, all right, yep, look at that, 17, looks like I hit you. I was like, wow. So
Yep.
Let's
So,
see.
If you wanted to now the STL file for the PEG converter that I use on the miniatures, I put that on a shop at Thingiverse, and I'll put a link in the comments section when this video is posted. That's for free.
Okay.
Anyone?
Nice.
It's a Creative Commons. Grab it, print it off at your own leisure. Print as many as you like. Distribute them to your friends. I have no cares. It works. It's not fancy. If someone out there,
It's like this channel. It works. It's not fancy. Come on.
right? And if someone out there who is an engineer looks at it and says, "I can do it better," be my guest, please. Absolutely.
All right, so Tammy has another question, and by the way, Tammy's specialty, I believe, is special education.
Yes.
John, what other accommodations might you have become aware of for others? In other words, there are other kinds of disabilities that may need accommodations. That's a good question, actually.
Well, we mentioned the deafness.
Yes.
So I don't know ASL or American Sign Language.
No.
And most people don't. And that's something that would be a bit harder to accommodate in an in-home game if you don't already know it. So I'm not entirely sure what could be done with that. I admit that my specialty is blind and visually impaired.
Right.
When it gets beyond that disability, I'm in the woods a little. But one thing I would recommend is kind of asking the person themselves what they would like to have or what would work for them. You can explain the kinds of things you're going to do in your game, how you want to present your game. And then they can tell you, well, okay, this is going to work for me, but this is where I'm going to need an accommodation. And then you can work with them and just be open to what their suggestions are. Now, maybe if you've got someone who is very tactily defensive, they do not like to be touched, they do not like touching, then that person is going to be the person where, you know what, someone else is going to move their mini for them, and they're just going to look back and maybe use a laser pointer to point out where they want their guy to go. That's an option, because there are people that are very much, it's not just a, I'm going to be a grump about this, but it's someone who's actually got a real thing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've played with people that have kind of emotional or psychological disabilities in some senses, limitations. And in that sense, the best thing you can do is be patient with them, because you're going to come across a point in a game session where you'll have built up the tension really high. And suddenly that person is going to, like, it's the middle of a combat. The party members are getting ready to fall. And the bad guys, the next, the doors open up and the next group of bad guys run in, and it's just like, oh my gosh, the tension is high. Everyone's on the edge of their seats. And that one person who's very sensitive,
Yeah.
well, they won't be able to handle it.
Right.
And this is and it's at that point where you as the GM have to recognize what's going on and be willing to say, let's take 5, without calling out that person necessarily. If you can avoid doing so, just say, hey, you know what? This is a really tense moment. Let's take 5, get a glass of water, use the restroom, we'll come back. And you're going to lose the tension in those moments. You're going to lose it. It's gone. But it's already gone.
Right.
So the best thing you can do is make sure that you take care of your players, whatever their need is. And if that's what their need is, then that's what they need. It's hard for me to speak in detail about a lot of different disabilities.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Like if someone is wheelchair bound and they just can't get up out of their chair, well, I mean, that's kind of obvious. Of let them sit where they want at the table,
right,
so that they can see what's going on. And then if you need to pick up your battle map and move it closer to them so that they can move their mini, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
Or if they would prefer that someone else move their mini for them, and they just kind of look and use the laser pointer option again, or whatever works for you. Maybe you want just a stick. I don't know. I'm always good for low tech. Like if I can find a low tech solution that doesn't involve a computer, I'm down.
Yeah.
Because that means we can game when the power's out.
Yeah. And
Nice.
and it also simplifies things.
Yeah.
Potentially less distractions. By the way, Tammy says, she's like, yeah, I was just going to say we should start each game by asking if anyone needs an accommodation.
Yeah, or just like to facilitate this game, since that's my job as a DM. Is there anything that you need for me to know about any of your needs, or things like that?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and listen, see, part of that session 0 part comes from the fear of some old school gamers, where it's gonna be like, oh, I can't deal with spiders. I have an issue with spiders. If there's any spiders in the game, I can't.
They caricature it, which is not the right thing.
Right. And, listen, I always feel there are certain topics that should be verboten and left off screen, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that thing's, it's like torture, crimes with children, all that stuff should just be hand waved. No details have to be done. Just like I wouldn't give details when my players in high school
certain social sensibilities.
wanted to find out if they seduced the barmaid, and then he wanted me to role play it. I'm like, ain't happening, guys.
Nice.
Ain't happening.
Oh, even then you were wise.
Oh, I was wise beyond my age. Please, that group. Tammy again, John, I love that. The tension may be gone, but it's more important to be sensitive to the player's needs. I love that you mentioned emotional issues, because they are often invisible. They're inside. Yeah, very few people wear their emotional issues on their chest, but when the stress hits, then it comes out, and that's when you find out. So, finding a way to remove that tension, remove that stress, is a great way to do it. And also, as a DM, it gives you a few moments to figure out how to better screw your players. I'm not saying that that's what you're gonna do. I'm just saying when you say everybody take a 5-minute bathroom break, that's usually when I start plotting as a DM. So
Shh. We're not
yes,
supposed to tell them that part.
I'm telling the secrets out loud. I'm bad. I'm evil, Rach. I'm evil. It's just the way I'm drawn. Oh my god, it's a bad reference to Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Wow.
And it was asked earlier about modifying a character sheet, in specifically Star Frontier's character sheet,
or any other
or any other character sheet. So the best advice I can give is you can do it one of two ways, but the best way is to keep everything in a single column. We get a tendency to want to, like, I got character's name and then class, race, level, like that. Excuse me. Put it in one column, because then if they're using large print, they only have one column to scan down.
Good strategy.
And if they're using a screen reader, then tab, I think it's tab, or whatever command is used to go from label to label or headline to headline, that will go down the line nicely.
Oh, cool.
The other thing you can do is there is a thing in Microsoft Word that is called headlines, and people use them in order to create kind of bullet point lists. Make good use of those for all of the things on your character sheet. So like the name, the race, and all that stuff, make those all headlines, because then I think the term is I think they become bookmarked is what it is.
Yeah.
And so the screen reader will automatically jump to each headline when you want it to scroll up or down. And so if you want to find out what your ability scores are, you can jump up to the ability score headline and then scroll down from there through the 6 ability scores. And then you've got the ability score, and then the number or modifier, however you do it in your system. Same with like skill and the number. And keep it in the single column all the way down, and whether that all the way down to the bottom. And that's going to make your character sheet very long. I think our 5th edition character sheets were like 5 or 6 pages long.
Oh,
okay.
But that is what allows all of that information to be in the single column, to be where they can be scrolled up and down easily. And that's one of the places where continual light and systems like it shine, because you can do that and still have almost everything on one piece of paper. Now, I had to enlarge some character sheets up to like 75-point font.
Okay.
For some people, and so then you're still getting like a 4 or 5 page character sheet to get all the information out. But that's what worked for the person. And
that's all that matters. I mean,
it can be as long as it wants, as long as it's working.
So whether it is Star Frontiers or White Star or D&D in any edition, that system more or less works. Just keep it in one column and you're good to go. Well, you should be good to go.
Cammy says, John, this is so helpful and brilliant. So
you're very kind.
Climbing the mountain. When I was in the wheelchair, I backed out on going to a convention because I was afraid I would get blocked in. I can believe that. And I've had players in some of my games that were in wheelchairs. I've also almost been run over by Tim Kask in his scooter at North Texas, but that's Tim. So, but you do what you can, and it's not even like I didn't do anything conscious to accommodate. It's just like, okay, I got to play here, but what do we need? We want to make sure that you're set up, you get everything that you need where you're at, because they're not going to be able to get up. And even if something as simple as getting a glass of water,
Right.
they're not going to be necessarily be the one to be, I'll be right back in 2 minutes. For them, it's going to be a bit longer. Just have it ready for them if they want it. And I'm also going to say, don't be overwhelming with it either. What kind of, do you need anything? Can I do anything? No? Okay. Yes. That's it. All right. That's what you need. You got it. Boom. Done. Because when you make an issue of it, then people become conscious of it, and you don't want to put anybody in that spot.
When you mind, other people mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So other people with disabilities choose where to sit is definitely a good idea. Close to a door if possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry, I interrupted you there, John.
You're good. Don't worry about it. I didn't really have anything important to say because I already forgot it.
Okay. Wow. This has been awesome. I mean, and it makes me feel really good to know something that I put together with help. James Bond was amazing putting together the additional work in Continual Light. To see it used as robustly as it has
intended.
This is beyond my hopes, but certainly, wow.
Sure.
It's like a shooting star. So you're making me feel really, really good about myself. Maybe I won't snore tonight, Rach.
Good.
Maybe you get a blessing.
I have one more feather for your cap.
Oh no. Yeah, I'm gonna turn red, man.
I was saving this.
Oh gee.
So at the end of the second session, because I ran 2 sessions this summer.
Okay.
At the end of the second session, one of my players, who was a regular player at the club during the school year and adores 5th edition D&D.
Right.
Because this particular player loves the kind of superhero vibe that your characters in 5th edition get. Came up to me and said, John, can we run this game during the school year?
Wow.
And I turned to him and I said, well, sure, but why? I mean, why would you want to do that? I thought you were really into the other thing. And he said, well, combats don't take so long in here, and I can use my own character sheet instead of asking about it. And it just plays better. I like it better.
You accomplish more. That's the whole thing. If you want to get through a session and say, hey, I finished, 15 rooms and 8 encounters and did a few traps, you can do that with Continual Light. You can't do that with 5e. You can't do that with Pathfinder. And they're not that they're bad systems. But resolution takes longer because of the system. It's just the nature of the beast. And what I like with things like Continual Light is that you're the DM. If you decide that you want to add a new class in, how hard is it for you to do it? It's if you attribute this, all right, adjust this, all right. Well, so you want to be you want to add some additional details to a ranger. You could design a ranger real easily. If you wanted to throw in different spells, you just pull them from another book and convert it on the fly. If you wanted to go beyond 7th level with these players, it's easy and doable, but it's all in the DM's hands. And I think it's very empowering for a DM to have options as opposed to, here's what you got, and you kind of feel like, oh, it's a large sandbox, but it's a sandbox that I'm stuck in, as opposed to, here's your tools, and build just what you want. There's a different feel to it. I hope that we kind of nailed that, but I happen to like it.
So one of the things that the students enjoyed is how many options for classes there were in the rule set. And I actually even invented one to go with them because how you set it up is so very easy to modify. It's a class is the base class plus one or two things.
Yep.
That's it. And so what I did is, they wanted to have a character who could fight and cast wizard spells. I said, okay, so we'll have the spell mage or spell sword or whatever phrase you want to call it.
Nice.
I kind of was like, maybe we could just call it a witcher.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
I was like, that's copyrighted, but
for the home game, who cares?
Yeah.
exactly. And this was kind of a home game. It's only at a like a summer club kind of thing. So whatever. So all I did is I just basically said, okay, so it's a fighter who casts spells like a wizard of 2 levels lower. So by the time you get to 3rd level, you get your first level spell as a wizard, and that's it.
Yeah.
And it worked.
It's hard to break Continual Light or Swords of Wizardry Light. It really is, and that's again, it's built off of of Matt Finch's foundation, which he, of course, he built that off of the original white box, but he made it so the average person could understand it, and then gave it to us, and I think it's just amazing, and I'm forever in Matt's debt for allowing me to play with it as I have. It really has been special. So I'm just there I go. Satisfied sigh. How's that? How's that sound?
So this is my personal copy, and it's got a bunch of other stuff in it, but it has not only the Continual Light in it. I also have both editions of issues of Torchlight in here.
Oh, nice! Thank you.
Because once you did Torchlight, I wrote those 2 articles for you. And I just was having so much fun with it, so much fun with the system, and I want to write more when the opportunity comes.
Yeah.
Because they add so much fun, so many little things to the system, and playing the game opens up ideas to more of it. Because like one of my ideas before I came up with all the miniatures, because that miniatures kind of decided this one. But I was going to say, well, let's change the setting and make it like a 17th century.
Okay, that could work.
And I realized all I had to do was just, pistols work using, crossbow rules, or a bow rules, and muskets use crossbow rules, and that's it. Because the sword, because a sword is a sword. Yeah. And you can like eliminate plate mail. It's not an armor type, but then keep the others. Just change chainmail to breastplate, because that was still sometimes used.
Yep.
And then you've got buff coat as opposed to leather or ring mail, depending on which one you wanted to do with it, and you're good. You're golden. And so I was really going to do that for a long time, and I started converting a lot of stuff, and the conversion was so easy to do with Swords and Wizardry Continual Light, or with Continual Light, I should say. With Continual Light, it's just a breeze, and I've done conversions for that. I've done conversions for like Pirates of the Caribbean kind of stuff. I've done a conversion, a real quick and dirty conversion for sci-fi, and for modern day.
Wow, that's awesome, and that's what I love to see. I mean. And honestly, and that's one of the Continual Light. The new edition probably comes out, I'm guessing, late summer or early fall. Jeff Jones, my layout guy, was in Ireland for work, and then it got extended in Ireland. So when Jeff is done with that, he's going to kickstart that. But then James Bond was doing a stretch goal of about 5,000 words for a micro setting and 3 little adventures. And I think it wound up being 18,000 words.
That's awesome.
Yes. And it's going to be its own project after Continual Light. And then we got to do Torchlight issue 2. And then we also wanted to do with Mike pub crawls, like one sheet dungeons, like the map on one side and the dungeon on the other, and it's something really short and dirty to get out. Mike's been writing those. So there's a lot of balls that are being juggled, but it got to wait for continual light to get out the door first.
Yeah.
Well, but even once continual light gets out the door, and that's going to be in print, continual light or Swords of Wizardry continual light up on Amazon. We'll stay up on Amazon until I can get the new files up. But if anybody who's listening to this is a teacher, or you run a school club, or you run a Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop or anything like that, email me at tenkarstavern@gmail.com, and we will work it out so you can pay me my cost, and I will have Amazon ship your issues to you at cost. It's at cost plus shipping. There's no prime in this case, sadly, but it should bring the cost down if you're buying multiple copies.
Nice.
I'm not looking to make a profit off stuff that can be helping out our kids. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, that's our future generation, and if they get a chance to play role-playing games and maybe keep out of trouble, that was my mother's idea. I know where they are. Screw the satanic panic. I know where my kids are.
Right. She's like, I raised them this far. They know who they are. Yeah. This thing is not a.
Continual light meets Solomon Kane should be a thing. I'm not saying otherwise, but could I clone that IP? I think Solomon Kane is still copy. Oh, I don't know. Some of the earlier stuff is no longer under copyright. Tom, you're causing me troubles, man. Stop doing that. I like Solomon Kane. It's a great concept. Just curious, would it matter what materials 10 cards were of as long as they had food grade finishes? James, I'm not even going to try to figure out what. Tenkarian Minions shirts are probably going to be in the works this fall too. We got preliminary artwork done. They look awesome. I didn't ask for the artwork, but damn it, Full C does a great job when he's.
Oh,
inspired.
That was him too.
Yes.
Okay.
So
awesome.
I'm so and these people, they don't shut up. File the serial numbers off it. Yeah, I what? Column insane? Is that the way you?
There you go.
I'll just reverse it, holy crap! Wow, dude, we're almost at an hour 25.
Nice.
Does not feel like it
not at all.
This has been fun.
And I got news for you too.
Tammy
wants you back because she wants the opportunity for the listeners to have
questions.
To gather questions.
And
because
this is really amazing stuff.
Well, I can't promise I have all the answers because Lord knows I don't, but I'd be more than happy to come back again and answer what questions I can.
Cool.
Oh, James Seymour came in late. James, the whole episode was primarily dealing with using continual light to facilitate gaming for the visually impaired and the blind. And I have Rach is going to have to deal with me later on tonight as like I glow in the dark because honestly I feel really good because
I'm glowing in the dark for it.
I know.
Especially I was the inspiration.
Rach, you were the inspiration of something that
mission accomplished.
So it's like I want something that my wife would feel comfortable playing.
and I do. I love playing that.
And she's played it at conventions. Now, and it's like gets right into it. Hey, you know what? Actually, you got to find your character sheet. I think you might have leveled up now for ShireCon. I think you survived.
I think so. I keep losing the things, but I'm sure I can find a character. I think I have character cards back in the bedroom in a folder.
All right, Rach,
whether they're from North Texas or from Shire.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I might have saved.
You better have saved, or else you don't.
I was going to be starting over again.
Yes. Tammy says you are always the inspiration, but Rach's the inspiration for the blog. So I mean, she's Rach kept me gaming. I just come back to gaming when I started dating Rach, and she was the one that would tell me on a Saturday night, "You got to take me home." I go, but we're on a date. He's like, yeah, but you got your game tonight at 8:30 on Fantasy Grounds. You should play. I'm like, are you real? I mean, is this reality? Can this be true? So
Or is it just fantasy?
there you go. I knew I knew I had struck gold. So that was awesome. So again, I struck gold in Rage. So it's like I want a game that you'll feel comfortable playing. I mean, the first RPG Rage played was Tunnels and Trolls, and part of the reason was I was like, it
was multiple choice.
Well,
you could do this, that, or this.
Right. I ran her through a solo.
Yeah.
But it was only D6s. So I was like, there's no
I don't remember rolling dice in it.
Yeah, there was
Okay.
But you said roll dice and add them up. There was no big, it was no big brouhaha. James Seymour, continual light might help with sad, too many of us affected by the dark of winter. Sadly, continual light does not actually shed light, but if you it will help you game, James.
I love it.
And hey, if you are fully sighted, but you're worried about doing stuff in the dark of winter, learn how to read Braille, and you can play continual light.
There you go.
There you go. When you're up north, in the land where the sun don't shine in the middle of the winter,
Or if you want to, read your gaming books at night without waking up your spouse next to you by turning on a light, you just holding it in your lap and moving your hands back and
there
forth.
You go.
Yep, James, I knew seasonal affective disorder.
Yeah.
I worked with the sergeant before I retired that believed he had
he's the one that turned you onto those lights. Yeah.
So he brought in the natural sunlight lamp for our desk at the command center. And I'm like, dude, what's this? He goes, it's sunlight. I'm like, dude, you work day tours. I go, I work the midnights. He's like, yeah, but our windows only go onto hallways that go onto other windows. We don't really get sunlight in here. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go home now and sleep through all the sunlight. So it's okay. I'll miss it anyway. So honestly, James, though, I mean, thank you so much again. James, it's really awesome that you. Sorry, James, John. Why am I saying?
Because you were looking at James here.
Oh yeah,
comments.
So, but John, I mean, really, you allowed me to fall on the sword, and you didn't toss me into the alleyway. You could have easily, man. I really screwed that up. So I thank you. I really do appreciate it because this, as you know, is a passion of mine to see it getting out there. So again, if your facility, your organization wants to share those files, feel free. You have my blessing. I mean, if you want to force them down the throats of others, you can do that too. Because it's seriously. I mean, there aren't I don't know of any options really for the blind to have an accessible game.
Yes.
That isn't, if you convert 5e, I can only imagine how overwhelming that would be for somebody that is totally blind.
Oh, the rules are really intricate on 5e.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. No, it would be way too far and way too much. So I listen, I don't do this for the money. I'm very happy when things like this can be a project it's a community project at this point to get this into the hands of the visually impaired and the blind. So seriously, run with it as far as you can, and as far as it's a beautiful thing.
Exactly.
You see, I'm doing that continual light shit right now. My face is getting all hot and warm. Oh God. Tom says, thank you, James. Good stuff. John, he did the same thing I did.
Yes, he was looking at James Seymour.
No, he was listening to me.
Yes.
He was listening to me.
All good.
Had a mention about establishing community-based gaming. Well, I'll be honest with you. If you are dealing with the visually impaired or the blind, that's a community within itself who they share certain needs and can help each other compensate.
Right.
But to have a game, a rule set that they can all
Right. And to
share.
have and to be able to like bring that many people together to be able to have a game.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a lot.
And that's where this where the three-dimensional terrain system that I worked on, and I didn't make this. I pulled a bunch of different pieces together. But I think that's where this makes the difference, is because someone who is visually impaired can play the game right next to somebody who is not visually impaired. And as long as the person with visual impairment is given enough time to analyze the board with their hands, they're using the same data.
Yeah.
That's
to make
awesome.
decisions.
You're not relying upon the GM to go, all right, well, you come into a room, you're coming in from the west, you're coming in the middle of a wall that's 30 feet wide, but you're that middle 10 feet, and it goes 20 feet to the north.
Right.
And
they're describing things that someone with a visual impairment might not be able to lay out in their imagination because they don't have that frame.
There is one other option that you could try. I thought of this while we were talking. You could get I think they call them like a felt board.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then cut out pieces of felt or other fabrics that have Velcro on the back of them, in order to use those as predetermined dungeon pieces to draw out a dungeon.
Oh, okay.
And then have different types of fabric or beads or dots or whatever attached to Velcro.
Right, different texture.
Exactly, to represent different things. That's a technique that's used when mapping intersections or mapping a store or a layout of a school, things like that, in order to help students learn where things are. You could use that for dungeons as well, or for wilderness maps and whatnot. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. I
love that idea.
That's a great idea.
And I'll be honest with you, if you're going to run a game at a convention, that's something that you can bring with you.
You could roll it up and put it in your suitcase.
Yeah.
It's
something that's certainly doable, as opposed to bringing terrain to most conventions or a game store. But it's like rolling out a battle map.
That's great.
But it's like colorform. Let's say colorform. Colorform. When we were kids, I had the Peanuts one. That was until they wouldn't stick anymore.
Oh, well, it was like a shiny plastic, and it stuck. Like you would dress them and whatever.
Well, I didn't dress my you just put them in the new cartoon positions. Of course, I was a rambunctious young man, so usually they were jumping off a tree or something like that. I'm sorry. It's what we expected people to do at the time. That wasn't us. I wouldn't jump out of a tree. I might hurt myself. But if I wasn't going to hurt myself, I might. Oh. John, thank you so much. Honestly.
Thank you.
Honestly, this has been
not
just eye-opening, but it's been informative. And I can guarantee you, I know Tammy pretty well at this point. She's going to have a list of questions. Tammy, when you have those questions, okay, you can just PM me, and then I will send them to John, so he's not surprised. Okay, so we can, but we will definitely bring back John, because you were a popular guest. We had a very lively live stream, and
wow, okay, good.
Yeah, and it's an important topic, because I mean, listen, folks, and I said this before, when you meet Rach, nobody's gonna go, "Oh, she's visually impaired." No, it's not obvious, but she is. So we know, Rach knows, and I, as her husband, I know how to compensate for. The joke amongst the two of us is that first it was Rach always got the newest Kindle. Now she always gets the largest iPad, because
whatever it takes to make it work, right?
Yeah,
Right.
they enjoy that at the low vision doctor. They're like, oh, so you have the big watch, the big Apple Watch. Or they'll be like, oh, is that a
iPad Pro.
not I
Oh.
never bring it on an iPad
Oh.
because I would never bring it on a train.
What?
The phone, the
Oh yeah, yeah.
Max.
Is that a
13? No, a 12 iPhone 12 Pro Max. And
It's
I'm
like, yeah,
that it is. And they're like, oh wow. And I was like, yeah, my husband makes sure that I have every screen, every retina display possible to make things easier for me. They're like, well, you have a really good.
2 thumbs up.
Indeed.
to me, it's just literally a no-brainer. It's like, hey, guess what? We're gonna a couple years ago. It's like, hey, we're upgrading our TV set to a 65-inch TV. Do we need that? I go, you need that. I want it.
Well, yeah, right. I said that. I was like, oh, do we need that?
And it's great because
Where are we gonna put it? We're like, so we have
Most-
2 big TVs.
Yeah.
Or well, 50 and 65. So there's quite a difference.
But it's like, but it's funny because then I don't have to read the subtitles all the time anymore. Before I used to always.
Right. Well,
And-
when they're really little.
Right. And the funny thing is, I do it without even thinking. Subtitles. I just read them off. My brain just goes right into that mode. And now there are times when I start doing it. It's just like, oh, I can read it. I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah, or he'll start it off finish it.
So, yeah, it's cool that we can accomplish that. So, oh God. Well, again, John, thank you. We will have you back.
Yes.
And I will not screw up the timing this time. Well, I can't guarantee that.
We will all do our best, and that's all that counts, right?
Yes.
I was an administrative sergeant for an inspector for a number of years, and my way of filing projects that had to get done was a pile of papers on my desk, and the lower it was in the pile, the older it was. So I would peek at the bottom every once in a while and went, "Oh, this is due in 3 days. I better get that one done."
We missed a question.
I can't ever imagine what you're talking about. I've never done the same thing myself.
Uh-huh. Oh, actually, James.
And this is great.
James has a good question before we bow out of here. For sight impaired, are descriptions the key for gaming, or is something tactile more important during a game?
So something tactile can be very important in order to provide that sort of feedback. A detailed description, though, is also just as important. It really depends on where your strengths are as a DM. If you have the ability to describe something using all 5 senses and do it, concisely and with vigor and things like that, then you're good. Go for that. If you know that that's not your strength necessarily, then using props is a powerful thing. Like for example, like you found a scroll and hand somebody like a rolled up piece of paper with a ribbon tied around it, or whatever you do, that kind of tactile stuff is really cool. And you can say like, hey, don't actually unroll it and read it because it's not the thing. But here's the stuff that you guys find and stuff like that. And that tactile stuff can really kind of help bring the verisimilitude in, not just for that player, but for all your players. But it really comes down to where your strengths as a DM are and what you're comfortable with, not just because you've got to use it. You can have the best accessibility tools in the world, but if you are too nervous to use them, or you keep forgetting to use them, and then they're not really helping you or your players. So you got to work on a system that is something that you're going to remember on the fly. And that's one of the reasons why I went with the tactile, because I remember it on the fly. I don't have to, go back and double check things because I'm used to doing this with my Dwarven Forge and with my other terrain anyway.
Right.
And I had the ability to cart the things back and forth. So there are other things that play into that. But I did it for 2 years with just description and nothing else. And that went wonderfully. And we had students get highly involved with those. So don't feel like you need these tools in order to accommodate someone with a visual impairment at your table. You don't. They are icing on the cake. They're delicious.
Right.
but the cake is still a cake.
Awesome.
Nice.
A good way to put it.
Great.
Well, we'll let that be our swan song for tonight, because I don't think we're going to top it.
Mm.
But again, huge thanks to John. Thanks to Rach for putting up
Thank
for me
you.
the last 10 and a half years of marriage.
Thank you for doing the same.
I had the easier job, if you ask me. But
Thank you, Eric, for contacting me, for reaching out and being interested in this whole process, because it's really been an honor for me to be here to share this with you and your wife and with your audience as well, because I'm one of your audience. I've been here for ever since the start of COVID.
Oh.
So
Okay.
Well, God bless you. First off, the honor is ours. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't mean to be playing that backyard schoolyard game. The honor is ours. We're very honored to have you with us. So thank you.
If you ever want to see my other work, you can find me on RPGs and more on YouTube. I have a small channel where I talk about my own experiences and things.
I'll have to put
awesome.
a link there.
You know what? Send me the link, because you won't be able to put it up because they'll just spam it. But send me the link and I will pin it.
I'll send you an email with all the links to the things that I use.
We will
so
pin
you
them.
can
Yes.
set it up any way you like.
We will make a pinned comment on this video for folks to catch it. And since you mentioned COVID, folks, we're still in the midst of the world of COVID. Nobody here is your parent, as far as we know. We're not going to wipe your hiney. We're not going to switch your nose. We're not going to make you happy. We're going to tell you to use your common sense. You're an adult. Most like, I know the demographics for the channel. You're an adult. Use your common sense. All right. Mm-hmm. Be safe. Be well. God bless each and every one of you. Roll those dice. Roll it. Roll them well. I will be back again tomorrow with some random video on Sunday. Maybe not random. I don't know. It depends on how evil I feel. Shush. And I'm looking forward to seeing you. I'm looking forward to more comments. If you have questions for John, drop them either as an email to me at tenkarstavern.com. Leave a comment here. We will be happy to do a follow-up. John's an amazing guest, and he knows his shit.
Too right.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Peace out.